Hello, welcome to the audience. Thank you for joining our live talk today with Kristian Bollerup Jensen from the Lego Group. Kristian, welcome. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
I'm very glad that you have joined, and you are the Vice President Corporate Risk and Internal Audit of the Lego Group with more than 2 decades of experience in the compliance area. Not just worked for the Lego Group, but also for other companies. So may I ask you to introduce yourself and let us know what is your responsibility, and let us know about the Lego Group a little more and the compliance structure of the Lego Group. I think that would help us to understand better how you deal with compliance topics like the new European Directive on supply chains. Thank you.
And thanks for inviting me, Sarah. It's a pleasure to be here. As you said, I'm Kristian Bollerup. I head up corporate risk and internal audit at the Lego Group. I'm sure you are all familiar with the Lego bricks, which is our main product. I have a long background from compliance. Have worked in the external audit business and also in the internal audit industry for a number of years, always focusing on compliance, audit, risk management in the broadest sense. Over the latest years, focusing really more on internal audit and risk management rather than financial statement audit, which I did in my previously in my career. So just a bit about the Lego Group. As said, we produce the Lego bricks, 8-10 billion euro size business, growing quite rapidly these years, expanding to new markets, new audiences across the world. Of course, focused very, very much on compliance. Probably the biggest selling point almost of the Lego Group is that we're a sustainable company. We're a compliant company. We're a company you can trust. We produce a sustainable product, families, children, our main audience. We want to make the world a better place, truly. So compliance really is a key focus for our business. And as said, growing then into new markets holds its particular challenges, I guess, from a compliance perspective. What we consider prudent business in Denmark or in Europe may not exactly be the same type of prudency you find everywhere else, which is perfectly fine. But of course, we need to stay within certain guardrails that we set out as a company. So an interesting, a growing company with a clear set of corporate values, and we want to make sure that even growing the business larger, we still maintain those core values of our business.
Thank you, Kristian. So as you know, I and my kids are a big fan of Lego, and I'm very happy and very glad to hear that it's a sustainable company, because it's not the normal in our world, because many companies produce the products in China and Mexico and wherever. And of course, heading to environmental issues, we are heading to human rights issues, and with the new European Directive, which I think it's the first step towards the right direction, maintain sustainable supply chains and sustainability in the due diligence. I think this is a very good step, and just wanted to ask you, what do you think? What is your opinion about the new European Directive for a corporate sustainability with obligations for large companies like the Lego Group?
Yeah, you could say, I think third-party risk management has been a focus for the Lego Group for a number of years, actually. We said we are a company with strong values, we've tried and have succeeded probably in maintaining these core values until now by really sort of looking at our company end to end, including managing our third parties from a risk perspective. What we have found, though, over the last few years is that we probably had a little more complexity around our third parties than what we assumed, because the third parties have fourth parties and they have fifth parties. A lot of that was from an efficiency perspective highlighted COVID years where some of this complexity actually popped up as disruptions now and then. So we figured out that we're probably in a more complex scenario than what we assumed. We've also probably figured out that we did a great job around third-party risk management when we initially assessed our third parties. So at the initial stage of the relationship, we did thorough due diligences, thorough risk assessments, had good processes, good controls around this. But now with the directive, we need to get our hands around the complexity. We need to also make sure that our processes, our controls, our assessments, our risk management is something that goes on continuously, not just at the initial stage. We need to monitor, we need to follow up, we need to control the third parties on a continuous basis. And the directive is obviously much more prescriptive around how to do that. We have worked extensively in this area, but we still have room for improvement. And we need in certain areas to be much more specific, much more continuous, much more end-to-end really across our supply chains, across our third parties in general.
Yeah, that's great. Just a question here, because I think that's very interesting that you say end-to-end. So we are talking about toys for children. We are not talking about dual-use goods or any software or any, very risky products. What are the criteria for risk assessment? Could you please tell us about a few criteria that are made? I mean, we know about corruption perception index and in some countries about environmental issues and so on. But what would you say are the core risk criteria for your business?
I think ESG in general is one of the top criteria and has been for years, but now it's perhaps even more. So all risk factors under the ESG umbrella have certainly increased their weight in our risk assessment, but also areas like business continuity. As said, we were occasionally a little surprised during COVID to see that we have had disruptions, unexpected events in our supply chain because we didn't know it end to end. So we have business continuity perspectives, we have ESG perspectives, we have compliance, more specifically compliance perspectives considered as risk factors. I mean, do any of these third parties have access to personalized data? Factors like those also impact our risk assessment. So it's actually sort of a fairly wide set of criteria that plays into the risk assessment. We categorize our third parties in low, medium, high risk categories and have various actions that needs to be taken before we can approve third parties in the various categories.
Are you experiencing a change of the behavior of the customers, considering your end customers are children? Mm-hmm. But I mean, the parents of the children, are they asking for, like, here's my Lego? Yeah. Where is it coming from? I mean, yes, is it produced in China or is it produced in Europe? Yeah. What is the change in the, what have you experienced as a change in the past years?
It's obvious actually that our customers are much more alert because the consumers are much more alert. This is top of the agenda for all consumers. And to me, it's, and I think to the Lego Group, it's much more than just the product. Please don't tell anyone, but we actually produce plastic bricks. It's plastic.
Yeah, exactly. It's plastic.
It's plastic.
Of course.
However, it's what we consider sort of good plastic, because it's actually reused, recircled from one generation to the next and to the next and to the next. And the Lego bricks you had as a child are still in use probably today, where your kids will play with the same bricks. The product is obviously, you could say it's one thing, but I think it's more holistically the behavior of your company, the Lego Group. We try to make the world actually a better place, and it's not just by creating good quality toys. It's actually by doing good in many other ways, by being a responsible citizen, a good corporate citizen of the world.
And that sounds like a perfect company. Yeah, please.
Yeah, but you could say, yeah. And I think actually that's we're a solid company from a financial perspective, and that's, I think, why we're successful. So if we have instances of non-compliance, I think the downside is perhaps even bigger than if you're, forgive me, just a normal company, where we behave well because we need to behave well. Else, the concept of failure is perhaps even bigger in a company that is, as of today, ranked fairly high in most sustainability indexes. So I think it's more than just a product the consumers are interested in. It's the corporate behavior of a company of the Lego Group.
In the past years, I've never heard about any scandals or anything about the Lego Group. So I think fingers crossed. So I think this is already a good point to say we are a role model. But we have today the title "Break the Silence." So we want to talk also about uncomfortable things.
Yes.
And have you had any, like, could you please tell us? I know about confidentiality and everything in your company, but during your career, have you had any whistleblowing cases about human rights and environmental compliance violations in the supply chain? And if yes, what have you done, or what were the measures to investigate and follow up and close the gaps?
Certainly, I think we have instances of non-compliance, also within areas where we would really not want to have non-compliance events. Some of these events reported to us by outside parties, by whistleblowers. So to me, actually, having a whistleblower system is a fundamental part of having a good, solid business, a sustainable, a compliant business today, because you will occasionally not know to the smallest detail what exactly is going on across your third parties, across the supply chain, across the company, end to end. Let me give you some slightly generic, but still actually tangible examples of where we occasionally see non-compliance. Let me give you an example of we had this was actually previous in my career. We had a third party doing various security facility services for us in India, and this is not actually to throw anyone under the bus, but what was reported to us by a whistleblower was that the same employees would work 8 to 9 hours for our company, and then they would go across the street and work another 8 or 9 hours for another company. Clearly not in line with our corporate charters for how even third parties should work for us. And something that was extremely hard to actually note had it not been for a whistleblower. So generally speaking, I think where you have, especially the service is sort of intangible, it's extremely useful to have sort of a full supply chain due diligence and risk assessment and control monitoring process, and on top of that also a whistleblower hotline to allow for what you can't see for yourself.
That's a very good example. I think coming back to your case, what was the major reason why they did work 19 hours per day? I mean, this is not fun, not at all. So was it the supplier not paying the employees sufficiently so that they could, go home after 9 hours work? Was that a problem? And what was the measure to, stop them having two jobs, two full-time jobs?
Yes, exactly. And you're spot on. Yes, exactly that. I think for some of the employees, this was a matter of providing for themselves and family. So what we did was, of course, to go back to our vendor and have a conversation with them about their relationship with what was for us even a fourth party. So the third party was our vendor, and their employees was the fourth party. So what we did and what we do today is, of course, work with our third parties, of course, to identify where they are non-compliant, but also to continuously kind of raise the bar in their business to make sure that they continuously move closer to standards that would be similar to us having the relationship directly, actually. Of course, the Lego Group or any probably European modern day company would never allow for a 19-hour workday. So I think working with the vendor to make sure that they continuously raise their standards is also part of this.
That's a very good bridge to our next topic, which is the cost of compliance.
Oh, yes.
And if you're considering that the result of a conversation with this vendor is to increase the salaries sufficiently so that the people do not have to take another full-time job, that would also increase the cost for the group, for this vendor, right?
Absolutely.
So, and this is the cost of compliance. So that's my experience, that some companies don't want to know. They don't want to know. They don't want whistleblowing because these are issues they have to deal with. And at the end, it will, of course, increase the cost. But if nobody knows, nobody cares,
Yeah,
And
I would say, yeah, compliance is probably expensive, but then try non-compliance.
Exactly.
Because
that's a good one.
Yeah, because I mean, and again, this is not to throw anyone under the bus, but I mean, we have several examples of companies being non-compliant and either going out of business or paying substantial fines, penalties, business restrictions. So I think if you believe compliance is expensive, then try non-compliance. I think that is even more expensive. And just, you could say a note on the cost of compliance for the Lego Group. I don't think we consider it cost of compliance. To us, it's the cost of how we run our company and with customers, consumers, authorities, our owners, our internal, external stakeholders. With how they want us to run the company, then this is not a cost of compliance. It's just we want to supply products sustainably. We want to work with our customers sustainably. We want to work with service providers sustainably. Yes, compliance is an aspect of that, but to us, it's more that, I mean, that's simply how we run our company. And I would say some of the systems that we use, some of the people that are hired in to run these compliance processes, the cost of those are limited compared to kind of the bigger picture of the company.
Before we started the talk, you mentioned that you have roughly 100 people in the legal and compliance internal audit globally. And considering the turnover of the Lego Group, which was 55 billion in 2021, Danish krone, what would you say, or what would you estimate the cost of compliance in that? What is the percentage approximately for compliance? Is it like 5%? And would you say that if you consider the damages you are preventing, the financial damages, is it worth it to invest the 5% or the 10%? I don't think it's 10%, but what do you think is the relation between cost and benefit of compliance?
I am not concerned about the cost benefit. Actually, I said this is actually just how we want to run the company. And as said, if I am to talk about the compliance cost, I think to me it's only sort of the small excess amount of how we would run the company anyway. If it's and I think that is probably even below 5%. I have seen analysis showing that if you have a compliance cost of 1, then sort of correcting compliance, the cost of that is probably 10 versus the 1. And if you even have a non-compliance event happening, then the cost is likely 100 versus the 1. So I think to me, it makes more sense to spend the 1 to begin with. And of course, then you'll never see the 10 or the 100 coming at you, because hopefully you can actually prevent the non-compliance or even correcting stuff in the first place. So it's everyone's guess, of course, but I'm comfortable with the cost benefit of compliance. There's no doubt in my mind that this is sustainable also from a financial perspective.
Perfect. So last question from my side, Kristian. What are your recommendations, or what recommendations do you have for the audience for a practical implementation of the new directive?
If you're sort of starting completely from scratch, then I think I would almost sort of suggest sort of almost a back of an envelope type of approach. Identify the 15, 20 biggest risks you have based on very, very few questions with some key employees across the organization. So really, without going into academics, what would be the 15, 20 risks that you would really want to mitigate? And then identify them, see what mitigations have you in place, and then you can sort of work out the details after that. So I would almost start back of an envelope and then do the expert-led thinking after that. It may not be 100% the right answer, but it will get you started. And set the gut feeling, the back of an envelope type of approach often gives you pretty much the right answer anyway.
Would you say that that the 15 to 20 risks are per country or per region or globally? Because I think
I think it's all of the above actually, because I think I would in in a optimal scenario, perhaps start locally. What are the 15, 20 risks of a given country? All countries start with that. Then we consolidate, and then we have the 15 to 20 risks that consolidated are the most important on an aggregated level, on a company level. So top management, they need to know about the 15 to 20 on top, but in every single country, they also have 15 to 20 that they need to mitigate locally. I think that's how risk management should work. It's not some paper exercise done on top just for the annual board meeting. It's actually something that should continuously flow across the company. So start low, aggregate and consolidate, and then actually mitigate, manage the risks on all levels of the organization, if that makes sense.
That makes absolutely sense, and I think these are one of the duties that are coming through the directive for the directors and the board, showing the risk assessment, the risk mitigation plan, and what the measures were. They and I think also your group have to produce a report for the public and for the authorities who will maybe ask you, maybe not. Nobody knows. Last question, what was your biggest challenge in the last year regarding compliance?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the biggest challenge, as said, coming out of COVID, I think my biggest challenge is that I'm not quite sure what I don't know around our third parties. It's okay that you don't know everything, but as long as you know what you don't know, then you can actually work on that. My concern was coming out of COVID. I wasn't quite sure what I didn't know. So I think that's probably something a lot of companies face, actually, that it's so complex, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, that's a good last statement. You can never know what you don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
And so to some percentage, it's always intransparent in a global company, in a global group, and also in mid-sized companies. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you to the audience for joining, and happy to have you in another live talk maybe next year to see what happened regarding the new directive. Thank you very much, Kristian.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining. Goodbye. Thank you to the audience. Please join us on our next live talk. We will publish it on LinkedIn, and happy to invite you to the next live talk. Thank you very much for joining, and have a great day. Goodbye from Disco.